NASCAR is now racing on dirt, and it's absolutely crazy. And this year they're racing on ovals, F1 tracks, inside football stadiums, and on dirt tracks. NASCAR is really shaking things up. Yep, they're skidding around Bristol in the dirt, and it's great. So, let me explain. Well, recently NASCAR has been changing. The days of purely racing on ovals are gone. They've been seeking a way to inject some variety into the sport, showing the skill of the drivers and attracting new audiences. First big change has been the cars. The next-gen cars are an enormous departure from the stock cars NASCAR fans are used to. They're more aerodynamic, generate more downforce, and create less wake for the cars behind. And the goal of the rules is to lower the costs and entice more manufacturers to enter the sport. Kinda sounds familiar. They've also moved from an H pattern to a sequential, and from a solid rear axle to a fully independent setup. It's all very fancy now. They have center-lug wheel nuts, big brakes, and lower profile tyres. And they're capable race cars now, and not just for oval tracks. And for the past few seasons, there's been a lot of change. Looking at this year's calendar, you can really see it. One minute they're at Daytona, then they're at a Formula 1 track at COTA, then racing inside a stadium in LA, then skidding sideways on a dirt track. Oh, and of course, racing at Le Mans. The video we made about it is just up here. First, the road courses. NASCAR has been slowly adding road courses to the schedule in the past few years. And they've been to some great circuits, 3 of which I've actually driven myself. Watkins Glen is like the American Spa. Circuit of the Americas, well, us F1 fans know that well. However, I've never raced there. Sonoma is absolutely incredible, one of my favourite circuits in the States, and of course, the Indy Road Course. And they also run at the Charlotte Roval. And that one, although I've never raced it in real life, is one of my favourite in iRacing. It's a seriously technical circuit. And because the cars are heavy and the braking distances are large, that tends to lead to much better racing, with overtakes happening constantly. As we know in NASCAR,
Robin's son is racing.
And these cars can knock each other about and still keep on going. The racing is absolutely ace. Then there's the Chicago Street Race as well, a super tight and technical track with really close walls. Then on top of that, they have some of the iconic, but bizarre to us Europeans, short track races. The LA Coliseum and the Bristol Night Race. The LA Coliseum is just mental. They took an enormous football stadium and put a quarter-mile racetrack inside it, leading to super tight and technical racing. Compared to the super speedways, these tight tracks are a completely different style of racing. Drivers are trail braking into the corners and have to be really careful on the throttle coming out. Just imagine driving a stock car here with 670 horsepower. That would be just incredible fun. Then imagine the backmarker traffic. It's only a quarter of a mile long, so you have to constantly be making moves. Oh, and if one car gets loose, the crash can be enormous. Nobody has anywhere to go. Then there's Bristol, which they've raced at twice a season for a while now, but in 2021, it got a bit crazy. The track is a little bit longer than the Coliseum at half a mile, and has 28-degree banking, so it's steep. But the thing is with this place is that it has 2 surfaces, a concrete oval and a dirt oval. And dirt oval racing is a world of its own. Just look at these things. These are outlaw sprint cars, 1,000 horsepower, 600 kilos, and enormous wings. They even pull wheelies. These things are just crazy. Then there are super late models, enormously powerful but longer wheelbases sliding through the corners. And there are a load more, but you get the picture. Now imagine those same tracks, but just running a next-gen car. And you can imagine how that might go. And that's what NASCAR did. They decided to run the dirt configuration of the Bristol track instead of the concrete. Yep, so after 70 years without a dirt race in the top flight of stock car racing, they are going back. Then they announced that they were going to run the exact same cars, essentially just running some different tyres and some covers over the radiator grills. That's it. And I must mention that dirt oval cars are incredibly specialised. For example, they don't sit square on a flat patch of tarmac. They stagger the setup so they maximise the grip on the banked oval tracks. So for example, in a track car, the setup will be symmetrical, with the same toe, caster and camber on both sides of the car. With dirt oval cars, they'll run positive camber on the left-hand side of the car, and each tyre will have different toes to allow the driver to get the car into the corner and get on the throttle earlier. And the right and left sides of the car will have different ride heights to deal with the banking of the track. And they have specialised tyres and modified steering systems to carry as much speed through the turns as they can. Now, you might think that this is a crazy idea. For those that know NASCAR, they know that this isn't new. NASCAR started on dirt tracks, and although these cars aren't used to it, a lot of the drivers are. Many of them will have raced a lot of dirt tracks through their career. A little bit like single-seater drivers learn in cars. Many stock car drivers learn in dirt cars as well. This type of racing actually teaches a lot of the same skills that you need in tarmac oval racing. The main one being throttle control. Dirt cars initiate a drift to get through the corners, and the way to be fast is to carry the most speed through the corner. Drivers do this by being super smooth. They balance the car a lot on the throttle. Adding throttle increases the angle of the slide, and lifting the throttle straightens the car. And they do counter steer as well, but the main control is with the throttle, only sometimes using the brakes to get the nose into the corner. Of course, it does depend on the type of oval. Now, I glossed over the track a bit earlier, but with regards to the dirt track, it takes 3 months and 2,000 truckloads of dirt to create. They literally have to lay the dirt onto the concrete circuit. So they put down a layer of sawdust on the concrete to make the cleanup a bit simpler, then a layer of specially formulated dirt onto the track from there, building it up layer by layer. And the dirt was very specially chosen as Tennessee clay, down to its microbial life and its ability to hold just the right amount of moisture. Yep, I didn't know it was that complicated either. They have to do this to avoid it getting too wet and becoming a swamp, or drying out and the crowd not being able to breathe, down to the dust. Not to mention the lack of visibility for the drivers. So, for the race weekend, they did have a few issues to start. In the truck series, the race had to be stopped a few times, as the drivers literally couldn't see after driving behind another truck for a couple of laps. Just look at this. How can anyone drive like that? And the other issue is that the mud clogs the radiator inlets, the engine air inlets, the brake ducts, the lot. So in the race, trucks were having to pit stop just to stop overheating, with the pit crews pulling the mud out and sending the car back out onto the track. But once the track dried out for the NASCAR practice, the drivers handled it well, sliding just a little bit and carrying a lot of speed through the corners. The Goodyear dirt tyres worked well, but wore out surprisingly fast, with drivers pitting pretty frequently. You could actually see the black marks from the tyres building up on the racing line, which surprised me considering this is dirt. Given that the Cup car record is just under 15 seconds on the concrete, drivers were doing 20-second laps on the dirt, and through the corners the cars were doing about 90 miles per hour. And there's one cool setup thing that I wanted to mention. So these cars run with the right rear wheel slightly higher than the rear left, meaning that the car sits better on the banking of the corner. The teams call this wedge, and it's essentially down to adjusting the height of the rear right. It allows the drivers to dial in more oversteer or understeer to balance the car. But in oval racing, rather than understeer or oversteer, they tend to call it being too tight or too loose. More wedge loosens the rear, less tightens it up. And the teams have a wrench or a spanner if you're English to adjust this in the pit stops. In the race, the drivers start on a smooth, grippy track, but after just a few laps, they were into their first real challenge. One of the big things about dirt racing is the way the track changes. As the tacky, grippy dirt wears out, you get slick and less grippy lines appearing, meaning you have to go exploring for the grip. So you can see the drivers running right up near the barriers to find some grip. But as soon as they do that, the line wears out again. So it's a constant challenge. Now, another strange thing about this race is that there are no green flag pit stops. The race is broken up into stages, making the drivers fight for the lead throughout the race, rather than just at the end. When one of these stages ends, there's a competition caution, and during this period, you can pit. But the orders of the cars into the pit lane is the order back out again, to stop pit crews having to rush and getting hurt. So the cars get filled up with fuel and tyres changed, with a maximum of 6 sets of tyres for the race. And the race was definitely entertaining, with loads of overtaking moves, the cars constantly 2 and 3 wide, and their amazing car control visible for everyone to see. But there were a lot of shunts. As soon as one car spins, the following cars just don't have the grip to stop. Joey Logano won the race after staying out of trouble for the entire thing. And the race has been run again in 2022, and earlier this year in 2023. With the viewing figures rising year on year. NASCAR is changing and it's working. It's definitely worth a watch. Not to mention the next gen car they took to Le Mans. It was absolutely rapid, and you can watch our video about it just here. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.